Yi Qiluo looked at the generals discussing so enthusiastically below and did not know if she should agree. The generals were talking so enthusiastically, as if this command center was very necessary. However, she did not understand why everyone was so enthusiastic about this command center. It seemed to be something that could not be delayed. After the great general raised this suggestion, it attracted the praise of many people. Everyone discussed it enthusiastically for a long time, but Yi Qiluo could not say a word. The great general suddenly stood up. As soon as the general stood up and everyone else shut their mouths, the scene instantly fell silent. The great general turned to look at Yi Qiluo. Just as Yi Qiluo was feeling confused, the general fell to one knee. "General, what are you doing? You can't do this." Yi Qiluo saw the great general's actions and hurriedly went up to help him up. However, he was tall and strong. How could a weak woman like her help him up? The great general said in a low voice, "City Lord, please make a decision as soon as possible. If you can't make a decision early, I'm afraid the human race of Rong City will be in danger." Seeing the general's desperate petition, the other generals also knelt on the ground. "City Lord, please give the order to set up the forward command center as soon as possible so that all of us soldiers can have a backbone to defeat the rebels." "City Lord, please give the order." "City Lord, please give the order." Yi Qiluo was confused as she listened to the shouts again and again. She did not know what to do and had lost the ability to think. Everyone's enthusiasm was for Rong City and the safety of the entire human race. This was everyone's hard work. Yi Qiluo watched in a daze and said solemnly, "Since this command center is so important, let's set up a pre-war command center with the great general as the core to coordinate this battle with the rebels." A gratified smile appeared on the great general's face. His eyes were very cold as he suddenly stood up. Yi Qiluo's face was on the general's chest, and he blocked her. "Thank you, City Lord. I will not disappoint you. Thank you, City Lord, for saving the human race from danger. Thank you, City Lord." Yi Qiluo felt relieved, as if she had suddenly lost a very, very heavy luggage. She slumped in her chair and looked at her uncles blankly. Yi Qiluo, who was extremely confident in the past and could arrange everything very smoothly, could no longer be found. It was unknown when it started, but it seemed that ever since she saw Li Yuanqing, she had lost everything she had. After the generals obtained what they wanted, they carried their heavy armor and left the hall. They did not look back. Yi Qiluo was the only one left in the hall. She sat on the cold chair and looked at the table blankly. What had she been doing all her life? What had she been doing the first half of her life? She asked herself this, but she realized that she could not find an answer at all. Perhaps her parents had once told her that answer. Your mission is to shoulder the heavy responsibility of revitalizing the human race. Perhaps revitalizing the human race was Yi Qiluo's mission for the rest of her life. She did not have any time for anything else, be it love or friendship. Now, it was as if everything had suddenly fallen from Yi Qiluo's shoulders. For a moment, Yi Qiluo did not know if it was true or false, whether it was good or bad. She only knew that she felt unprecedentedly relaxed. This relaxed feeling carried a little disappointment. What exactly is it? Yi Qiluo did not know what the emptiness in her heart was for, but every time she thought of this question, a familiar figure would appear in front of her eyes. That figure was so sunny and cute, with a faint smile on his face and the aura of a hero. "Young Master Li," Yi Qiluo muttered to herself as a tear fell from the corner of her eye. After the generals left the city lord manor with the generals, they mounted their horses and rushed out of the city. The command center will be set at the south wall. The wall is where the command center is. The great general immediately set his goal. He set his command post at the front. This was the place they had to defend. If the southern city wall was lost, the entire Rong City would be broken through. This was their last defense. Rong City had a total of 100,000 soldiers. Although there were more than 100,000 rebels outside, they were all messy. The 100,000 soldiers in Rong City were all elite soldiers. They were all carefully selected from various cultivators and were professional soldiers who had received absolute training. The rebel army outside basically only had a few 100,000 people. They only had these people left and were basically all soldiers. In terms of strength, the strength of both sides was very different. After all, Rong City had Yiqilua and the others' accumulation for so many years, so they had rich financial resources and their entire strength was very strong. In addition, they had trained well, so they should have the upper hand. However, the rebel army was not to be underestimated. They had obtained a batch of very powerful Dharma artifacts at some point in time. These Dharma artifacts were basically consumable. Moreover, many of them were very powerful. It was unknown who had created those half-human and half-beast creatures. In this situation, both sides seemed to be evenly matched. It seemed like no one could have the absolute advantage. The entire Rong City army divided the 100,000 people into 6 regiments. Among them, the 1st Division only had 10,000 people, but they were the core of the core, the absolute core power. All of them were above the 5th grade spirit transformation realm. With so many people, their combat strength was definitely off the charts. Moreover, they had obtained absolute advantage in equipment. They were equipped with good Dharma artifacts. This way, their combat strength would be stronger. It could be said that it was the combination of all the strongest combat strength that could be gathered in Rong City. It was simply a heartless war machine. The 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th divisions were all ordinary corps, and the distribution of personnel was very standardized. Those who could reach the spirit transformation realm could bring a small group of people. They were considered a very agile mobile army. The final 6th division was their city defense army. They only had 10,000 people, but they had mastered many array formations. The core weapon of the city guards was the array formation. Less than half of their 10,000 people were usually guarding outside. Most of them were guarding the safety of the entire city in places that others could not see. Such a ratio made their battle very balanced. The strategy discussed by the general and the others was to first send out a division. They would split into 3 groups and advance from the side and front together, surrounding the place where the rebel army was about to gather. They sent the 2nd division to harass the gathering of the rebels. This was because the rebel army was currently building their own huge artillery base. After they built up those very powerful cannons, it would be a huge danger to the overall defense system. Last time, they had been careless and allowed the other party to set up a camp without them noticing. This time, they had sensed something and naturally wanted to make a difference. The 2nd division split into 3 groups and headed towards the rebel army. They pressed over in a small group, while the other divisions stayed where they were. The 1st division was the core force, and only the great general could control it. No one else knew the movements of the 1st division. The commander sent by the great general to the 2nd division was a very famous general of the human race, Lin Fan. Lin Fan was also at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. He was extremely powerful and had many years of combat experience. He could be said to have a huge advantage in such a situation. He was very at ease leading as the general of the 2nd division. Just like that, the 2nd division was divided into 3 large groups and countless small groups under Lin Fan's lead. They advanced towards the south together. The great general even sent out the 3rd and 4th divisions to expand the overall defense line of Rong City to more than 50 miles away. What they wanted was to be able to block the enemy outside. This way, they could maximize the powerful advantage of their backup defense system. With such an arrangement, Rong City was naturally safer. There had been no movement from the rebel army for a long time. They were just waiting for the 2nd division to engage them in close combat and see who was stronger. I think the great general's arrangements are seamless. As long as we extend this front, we can advance, retreat, attack, and defend. Moreover, we can protect the defense of the periphery of Rong City. At that time, we can retreat and defend after exhausting their strength. These rebels will definitely be helpless. That's right, it's wonderful. We can attack and defend, advance, and retreat at will. We're simply at ease. He's a model of our learning. The remaining generals were all bragging about the great general's arrangements. Everyone was already deeply dissatisfied with Yiqilua's indecisive style. They were very happy to have such an opportunity to take the initiative to attack. Moreover, they had one more than they lost against the rebel army. They had always considered themselves to be orthodox. Although it was unknown where these rebels had obtained such a batch of powerful Dharma artifacts, it did not affect the overall situation. Everyone, don't be so relaxed. You have to know that since these rebels can obtain such powerful strength, And from the previous battle, there are many strange people among them. They have most likely reached a cooperation with the demons. The great general was still a little conflicted about the situation this time. After all, they did not have a complete advantage in the current situation. These rebels don't have any bottom line. It's normal for them to seek strength from the demons. However, these bandits are bandits after all. They won't be able to achieve anything. In my opinion, they just have to spend more effort. That's right. As long as we get rid of the city lord's leadership, it will be easy for us to defeat this rebel army under the wise and mighty leadership of the great general. We don't have to worry at all. That little girl, Yichilua, was fine in the past. She could still think of some good ideas, but now she feels like a different person. Isn't that so? Ever since she met young Master Li, she's been talking about him every day. Only that young Master Li. If you ask me, a grown girl can't be kept at home. Girls ultimately have to be like this. I've long said that the old city lord's life is not good. He only gave birth to a daughter, so she can't bear any responsibility. All right, let's not talk about this now. Let's get through the current crisis first. As they were chatting, the great general looked out of the tent. He felt that he had not received news for a long time. Normally speaking, their sentries should have come in to report 5 or 6 times every hour. In fact, at the most critical moment, they should have come in more than 10 times every hour. However, after an hour, there was no movement in front of them at all. How was the progress of the second army? Where was the second army now? Did they exchange fire with the enemy? There was no report of this at all. This made the great general feel a faint pain in his heart. Something's wrong. Where did the sentry go? That's true. According to the rules, the sentries should be rushing back to announce their victory now. But why hasn't there been any movement after so long? Could it be that the people from the second division haven't arrived yet? Or they can't find them? That's hard to say. The generals had their own guesses, but they could not figure out what kind of situation would make the sentries in front unable to send any news back. Moreover, after waiting for half an hour, there was still no news. Something was wrong. Almost 2 hours had passed, but the sentries seemed to have broken off. There was no news for a long time. There was news of sentries in the middle, but it was from other directions. There was no news from the second division at the front line. The great general finally sensed that something was wrong. Oh no, could it be an ambush? The great general cursed in his heart. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from outside. Report. The group pushed open the door and ran out. A horse galloped past outside and stopped at the door. It rolled off the back of his horse. It was a charred soldier. The warrior's entire body was burned beyond recognition. His back was even on fire just now. Now, he was rolling on the ground with white smoke coming out of his mouth. Report, report. The great general hurriedly took action. A thick spiritual energy was poured into the soldier's body, temporarily stabilizing his life. As the great general injected a thick amount of energy into the sentry's body, a flush suddenly appeared on his face. His entire face turned an unhealthy bright red as he suddenly opened his eyes. He swallowed another mouthful of blood and looked anxiously at the general to report, "General, it's bad. All the warriors and generals of the second division have been wiped out. No one survived." What? Lying about military intelligence is a felony. How dare you spout nonsense? He was just a small sentry. When had he ever been surrounded by so many generals in his life? Everyone looked at him nervously. They wanted to find a trace, even if it was just a trace of lying, from the changes in the soldier's expression. They wanted him to tell them that all of this was fake and that the second division was still alive, but their news had never been returned. However, this sentry's body was so severely injured that he could no longer lie. He was able to continue his life because of the spiritual energy that the great general had paid attention to. When the great general's energy retreated, his life would already be at the end of its rope and would immediately disappear. How could such a person lie? In addition, it had been 2 hours, but there was no news from the front line. The second division and Lin Fan seemed to be in danger. If I'm lying, Before he could finish speaking, his blood suddenly surged. The power that was blocking his throat finally could not maintain his life. He opened his mouth and spat out a large mouthful of dark red blood, mixed with a mess of broken internal organs. It splattered all over the ground. In the next moment, all the spiritual energy in his body dissipated, and his soul dissipated. This person no longer existed in the world. The great general's face was ashen as he looked silently at the sentry lying in his arms. This must be fake. Lin Fan's strength is extraordinary. He already has a lot of combat experience facing those rebel armies. After so many years, he can be said to know the rebel army like the back of his hand. It's impossible for him to be killed the moment he encountered them without sending any news back. This is simply nonsense. The person who spoke was a general of the 3rd Division called Qing Yun. The general of the 4th Division, Zhao Tian, also stood up. Great General, General Qing is right. Lin Fan has many years of experience fighting the rebel army. It's been decades, but he has never been defeated. These rebels are like dolls in his hands and are controlled tightly. He couldn't be defeated just like this. I think there must be something else. With these two people standing up to speak, the other generals also spoke up. They definitely could not afford to fail like this now. The 2nd Division was a very huge force. Even if it was slightly injured, it was not something they could withstand. But now, how was this just a little damage? The 2nd Division was completely destroyed. This could be said to be a huge decrease in strength for the entire Rong City. More importantly, not only were their strength weakened, but if this news was released, the entire Rong City would no longer be in the mood to resist the rebel army. At that time, the internal department would be in chaos. When no one had the intention to resist, their strength would be greatly reduced. At that time, Rong City would probably really become a pile of loose sand. There would be no hope left for them to organize the human race and snatch Rong City back, let alone revive the human race. No one could bear such consequences, be it the great general or them. The great general slowly stood up, his expression still so ugly. He raised his head and looked at the general of the 4th Division, Zhao Tian. General Zhao, I'm here. Send the elites to the camp of the 2nd Division at lightning speed and send the news of the front line back as soon as possible. Moreover, all the divisions will retreat and withdraw into Rong City as soon as possible. Don't continue maintaining the encampment outside. Yes, sir. After all the generals received their orders, they hurriedly left, leaving only the great general and his accompanying deputy behind. They looked at the sentry on the ground. Before the official battle, no one had expected this outcome. But who would have thought that it would really become like this? What went wrong? Logically speaking, even if those rebels had obtained a powerful replenishment in strength, their foundation was so bad in the past. Even if they had replenishment, they had at most improved compared to before. However, if they could really destroy the 20,000 corps scattered in 3 directions in a short period of time, how exaggerated would their strength be? Send a message to the city lord. The great general spoke slowly. What did you want to send? We need reinforcements from Ping City. After Zhao Tian returned, he immediately gathered the troops he had scattered on the flanks. His original plan was to expand the battle line on 3 sides. However, from the looks of it, this plan would probably not be used. The enemy was much stronger than they had imagined. They had to defend Rong City with all their strength. Based on the current situation, it was definitely very dangerous with their strength alone. Although he did not believe it in his heart, the sentries at the front line had still not returned. All of this was indicative of an outcome. Zhao Tian was very confident in their soldiers and was a good friend of Lin Fan, the general of the 2nd Division. However, he had no choice but to prepare for the worst. He still had a few trusted subordinates left. He specially sent out 3 teams to follow the 3 places that the 2nd Division planned to camp and investigate what had happened there. Zhao Tian thought that his arrangements were flawless. Although he was still a little worried, fortunately, his main strength was preserved. He couldn't care less if Lin Fan was alive or dead. However, before General Zhao could be happy for long, his deputy general suddenly ran over in a hurry. The deputy general rushed in a panic and reported to Zhao Tian, "General, something bad has happened. Why is there bad news again? Don't tell me that the troops on our flank have been wiped out?" Zhao Tian looked at the deputy general unhappily. After what had just happened, he could not stand others doing such a thing. This kid had been following him for so long, but he still did not know what was going on. Why did he run in so anxiously? The deputy general swallowed his saliva and looked at Zhao Tian with trembling lips. General, there's no news from the two troops in the flanks anymore. What do you mean there's no news? Tell me everything. What happened? We don't know the real situation yet. I've sent someone to investigate, but there's no answer to the message I sent. I don't know if they received the retreat order from the general. I'm afraid this isn't a good sign. Why are all of them so careless? Could it be that I'm raising a group of useless people? If they were really ambushed, can't they even send a distress signal? I wonder what they're doing every day. Zhao Tian was furious. He put on his armor, picked up his sword, and hung it on his waist. He walked out of his tent angrily. He wanted to see what kind of enemy could deal with these soldiers so easily. General, Zhao Tian's 3 personal guard teams were sent forward. One of the teams was heading north. They were the closest. Although they had to be careful, they quickly arrived at the original army's encampment. Originally, in their arrangements, the people from the 2nd Division had to camp first after arriving. Although they only left behind a simple command center, it was also their base. The command center of this advance corps was set up in a dense forest. There was an empty space dozens of meters in diameter surrounded by a towering tree. There were a few simple buildings in this empty space. These buildings were very simple. They were in a circle of various sizes, and there were array formations set up as defense. After finding this place, they found the command center of their troops. However, it was empty. There was no one here. There was nothing unusual outside. It was as if everything was normal. It was so quiet that there were no traces of a fight. The sentries who came to visit did not find anything unusual after investigating the periphery. After they sent the signal, there was no response from inside at all. The brother troops inside seemed to be gone. Where did they go? The captain of the team stood at the gap in the path and looked inside. They did not dare to go in for the time being. Captain, in my opinion, they should have continued forward. That's right. Look, all the buildings here are intact, and there are no traces of a fight outside. In my opinion, nothing happened at all. They should have won the battle outside by now. The captain also thought about it. If they had really encountered an accident, there would definitely be some clues as a very important encampment. However, there was nothing here. It was clean and did not look like a huge battle had happened. That was a few thousand soldiers. If they were really surrounded and intercepted, the combat strength that erupted would cause large-scale damage even within a few miles, not to mention such a small place. After the team members investigated first, they did not find any traces of the advance corps at the periphery. They decided to go to the command center to investigate. Perhaps there would be useful information left behind to let them know what had happened. Wait, let's send a report back to the general first. We have to explain that we can't explain the current situation clearly. We're going to the command center to check the situation now. If there's any news, we'll definitely report it immediately. Yes, Captain. As he spoke, a soldier took out a small jade token and muttered to it. After he was done, the small army gathered again and entered the middle area surrounded by the trees in 3 different directions. They were already cautious enough. Not only did they split up and not enter at the same place, but they also specially left 2 sentries outside in order to be foolproof. They could not get involved in this mess. There was a high chance that something had happened to the troops earlier. However, just as their small team stepped into the empty space in the middle, some black patterns vaguely appeared under the surrounding grass. These patterns were originally very dim and could not be seen clearly. However, as they walked deeper and deeper, the shape and appearance of the patterns gradually became clearer. The small team entered from 3 directions. After investigating the periphery of the empty space, they realized that there was nothing unusual. In the end, they gathered in the command center of the advance corps. However, the command center was very quiet and was very clean, as if it had just been set up and had not been used. There were all kinds of array discs and artifacts, as well as communication jade tokens. There were also many soldiers' armor placed neatly here. Everything looked so normal. The only problem was where everyone had gone. How could no one be watching such a standard command post? The captain was very puzzled, and so were his team members. However, what they did not notice at all was that ever since they stepped into the small area of the command center, A layer of black threads had inexplicably wrapped around their legs. The black silk wrapped around their legs and kept climbing up. By the time they reached the center of the command center, the black silk had already spread to their waists. "Captain, how should we report this back? This place is clean and tidy. The things are arranged neatly. It doesn't look like they were killed. Instead, it looks like they abandoned and fled. Could it be that they have already moved elsewhere?" "I think that's most likely the case. It's most likely that the rebel army appeared elsewhere, so it's possible that they moved. They examined it as they discussed it." The captain of the team was hesitating if he should continue reporting the situation here. The current situation was no different from what he saw outside. He did not find anything inside at all. What should he say? "Captain, what's that thing on your waist?" Suddenly, someone looked up and saw a layer of black threads spreading on their captain's chest. Even the others were the same. Everyone looked at each other and realized that the black silk was already too thick. Moreover, it was climbing higher and higher until it reached their chests. It could not be ignored. "Help!" This was the last message sent back by the advance team. Zhao Tian stood on the city tower with a livid expression, and standing in front of him was the great general. He did not expect that the command center that had just been established would be immediately disbanded in less than 2 hours. Just now, he and his brothers had wanted to snatch the power back from the city lord. But now, all their thoughts are gone. He could not figure out what had happened. The great general might have thought of other things, but if it wasn't for the hundreds of thousands of people in Rong City, why would he spend so much effort? His face was pale. He kept asking himself if everything he had done was worth it. "Have you summoned back all the people outside?" Yi Qiluo walked out of the main hall. She was wrapped in silver armor and looked heroic and aggressive. The great general knelt on one knee with a guilty expression and said with a trembling voice, "City Lord, the entire army has sent a total of 60,000 people. Out of the 30,000, only 5 remained. The remaining 30,000 have been recalled and are gathered in the city. It's only been 2 hours and 30,000 people are gone. Why is this happening?" Yi Qiluo's face was ashen. She had also thought that since the generals were willing to take away all these rights, she would release all these military power and let these generals fight for the citizens of Rong City. In fact, Yi Qiluo herself felt an unprecedented sense of relief, as if she had not felt it for a long time. However, her dream had been shattered in just 2 hours. The situation was very obvious. They had to ask for reinforcements. Although she had already sent a signal to the city lord of Ping City for help, Ping City was very far from Rong City. She did not know when he would arrive. There was another person who seemed to be reliable, but there was still no news. "Is there any news of young Master Li?" Hall Master Wang had just run over to report the situation. He replied carefully, "So far, there's still no news about young Master Li. I wonder where he went." The great general raised his head guiltily and looked at Yi Qiluo. "City Lord, I'm to blame for all of this. I was the one who wanted to expand the battle line, and I was the one who made so many warriors sacrifice their young lives. All of this is my responsibility. I beg you, City Lord, let me lead 10,000 people to fight our way out. Even if I die there, I'll die clearly and pave a way for Rong City." Yi Qiluo looked at the general coldly. At this point, is there any use in saying such angry words? But there are no buts. Since the enemy is already at the city gates, we have to be careful. I hope everyone can know that if Rong City falls, we will no longer have a residence. Thank you, City Lord, for letting bygones be bygones. Now is the time to use people. If she rashly withdrew the great general, it would be a very serious blow to the morale of the army. Yi Qiluo would not do such a stupid thing at this moment. However, they had to find a way out now because they did not even know who had killed their 30,000 soldiers. Did those rebels have such strength? If they could not figure out the true strength of the enemy, they would not be able to resist at all. Yi Qiluo stood on the city wall. The sky outside gradually darkened, and dark clouds formed a huge vortex outside Rong City. In the dark clouds, groups of half-beast, half-human warriors walked out. These warriors all had strange weapons and shouted as they rushed out of the dark clouds. They called out. They kept shouting, making waves of noise that disturbed one's thoughts and made one's mind dizzy. When that strange shout landed in the ears of the Rong City warriors, it was as if they had heard a very ear-piercing demonic sound. They felt dizzy. Only by instantly raising their spiritual energy and protecting their ears could they weaken the influence of these forces. Be on guard immediately. Following Yi Qiluo's order, a thick golden shield immediately rose in the entire Rong City. The golden shield isolated most of the sound. The sounds that made the humans dizzy in the city decreased by more than half. All the warriors were in a better state than before. These monsters shouted and slowly formed a messy array. They divided into 4 sides and surrounded Rong City. In just a short while, the huge Rong City was surrounded. Among them, a giant about 30 feet tall suddenly walked out. This giant had 3 eyes and 3 arms. One of them grew on his chest and looked extremely strange. After the 3-eyed giant came out, he roared at the sky. He took out a golden bead with his right hand and threw it at the city protection array. The moment the bead touched the golden shield, it exploded, producing a very strong shock wave that spread in all directions. Most of the inward shock wave was absorbed by the shield, and the outward shock wave directly hit the half-beast and half-humans below. Those fellows were sent flying by the huge shock wave like flies, howling in midair. However, these guys had thick skin. After being sent flying, they ran all the way back from a few hundred meters away, as if nothing had happened and stood where they were. In fact, after being beaten up like this, they became lively again and looked abnormally energetic. The giant seemed to be testing the waters just now. A glint flashed across his 3 eyes. After some simple consideration, he seemed to have calculated something and roared at the fellows below. Yi Qiluo looked at this group of things coldly. There was such a giant standing outside every side of the city. However, the other 3 sides were different. The 3-eyed monster shouted a few times, and the little fellows below him suddenly quietened down. All of them squatted on the ground obediently and sat down cross-legged. One could barely tell that they were humans. After they sat down, intense lights shot out from their heads. These lights were mixed with some gray colors and looked extremely strange. In the end, these lights gathered in one place and gathered on the 3-eyed monster. The hand in the middle of the 3-eyed monster suddenly stretched out and a thick beam of light shot out and injected into the golden shield. The golden shield suddenly began to tremble as if it was under immense pressure. It was as if it was very uncomfortable after being injected with this power. It was about to be crushed. Fortunately, this defense system was very thick and sturdy. Although it trembled for a moment, it still withstood it and finally stabilized. However, the 3-eyed man was not in a hurry. He allowed the energy in his hand to pour in. The situation in the other 3 directions was roughly the same. Those monsters were all maintaining a huge amount of energy and constantly consuming their city protection array. Although the city protection array could withstand it immediately, no one knew what would happen if this continued. City Lord, bad news. If this continues, I'm afraid our array formation won't be able to withstand it. At that time, City Lord, their power is endless. If this continues, I'm afraid we'll be in danger. At this moment, the great general stood up. What are you afraid of? Since they can wear down our city protection array like this, we can also gather our strength and continuously strengthen the city protection array. We will definitely be able to withstand it. This is our last home. No matter what, we can't fail. As the great general spoke, he took the lead and poured thick energy into the golden yellow shield. After the golden shield was enhanced by energy, it seemed to have become stable. Many people also gradually strengthened the shield. Even Yi Qiluo sat cross-legged on the city tower and kept pouring her spiritual energy into it. However, this could not last long. Yi Qiluo realized that their strength was actually completely insufficient to resist the other party. If this continued, she really did not know how she could escape. At this moment, the smug 3-eyed monster outside suddenly felt something strange on his body. Then, the hand in the middle stopped injecting energy. He looked down at the arm on his chest strangely. This arm looked quite bold, but why did it not seem to listen to him? Just as he was feeling puzzled, he suddenly saw a small person the size of his palm walk up his arm and reach his chest. This little guy was quite handsome and very young. He looked to be 16 or 17 years old, but he gave off a very dangerous feeling. The three-eyed man raised one hand and grabbed his other arm, wanting to capture Li Yuanqing. This little guy was too arrogant to appear here. The spiritual energy in his body was flourishing now. It was very easy to kill such a human. However, in the next second, the little guy's actions stunned the three-eyed monster and he forgot how to resolve it. Li Yuanqing had taken out a black sword at some point and slashed horizontally at the place under his feet. The light sword attack landed below, but it cut off the third arm of the three-eyed monster like it was cutting vegetables. Thick blood spewed out from the broken arm, completely contaminating the smooth cut. Ah! The three-eyed monster suddenly let out a scream. Its arm grabbed at Li Yuanqing fiercely, wanting to kill him as soon as possible. However, he no longer had the chance to see Li Yuanqing's appearance after he was captured because in the next moment, Li Yuanqing had already disappeared and appeared above his head. The sword in Li Yuanqing's hand was like an agile butterfly that kept dancing in midair, as if it was dancing a graceful trajectory. It was pleasing to the eye, but it revealed a huge danger. The black sword finally returned to Li Yuanqing and disappeared. Li Yuanqing stood on the head of the three-eyed monster. Below, a group of half-human and half-beast monsters stared at him. They shouted at Li Yuanqing in the sky with strange cries, but they were also very puzzled. Why did the three-eyed monster not move at all? Instead, it stood there perfectly fine and did not move like a dead person. On the city tower, Yi Qiluo's face was pale. She opened her eyes helplessly and saw such a familiar figure standing above the three-eyed monster. That figure was so familiar. It even appeared in Yi Qiluo's dreams over and over again. Yi Qiluo would never forget it even if she turned into ashes. Young Master Li? Yi Qiluo thought that she was hallucinating because she had consumed too much spiritual energy. She did not know if everything in front of her was real or fake. It looked so real, but it could not be real. Li Yuanqing had already left and would not return. This was because Li Yuanqing had already obtained everything he wanted. He came to Rong City and helped them because he wanted things that he did not have. Now that he had already obtained it, it was only right for him to leave. Yi Qiluo no longer had any hope. The moment Li Yuanqing rejected her, she should have realized that Li Yuanqing was not the guardian of Rong City. However, that figure was so familiar and dear. It was so similar to what she had seen in countless dreams. Just as Yi Qiluo was thinking sadly that she was immersed in her imagination, the three-eyed monster in front of her suddenly collapsed. Its huge body turned into pieces of meat that filled the sky, scattering thick blood everywhere outside the city. What? When everyone saw this scene, they exclaimed involuntarily. They had never thought that such a thing would happen. Why did such a powerful enemy die just like that? It was as if he had suddenly disintegrated and turned into flesh and blood that filled the sky in front of them. He was no longer a threat. What had happened? Was it the savior? The savior had come to save them. That had to be it. Li Yuanqing stood above Rong City like a god of slaughter. His eyes were emotionless as he stared at the tens of thousands of troops in front of him. Even though these half-human and half-demon monsters were all heroic and fearless when they rushed forward, they could not help but retreat after seeing Li Yuanqing. The tens of thousands of demon army retreated silently without any control. Only when their general blocked them with a huge axe did they stop their retreat. The remaining demons all had lingering fears. They knew Li Yuanqing's strength just now. Such a powerful vanguard was actually gone in one round in front of this person. There were a total of 5 intermediate generals in their southern front, and one of them was the overall leader of this operation. The 4 directions were the same. They had just met, but they had immediately lost a fierce general. How could they continue fighting?
No retreating.
Those who retreat will be killed. One of the Minotaur monsters held a long saber in his hand and cut down a row of demons. These strange-looking demons were split into 2 from their chests. Blood splattered all over the ground, forming a dividing line that blocked the demons who were retreating. After being frightened this time, these demon warriors slowly began to forget their fear. When they smelled the stench of blood, their eyes slowly turned red again, as if they had been infected by some virus. These fellows seemed to be completely unafraid. They suddenly came to a realization and widened their blood-red eyes in the direction of Rong City and Li Yuanqing. who was standing in midair. Just as Li Yuanqing stopped here, the few generals of the southern front were all mobilized. There were a total of 4 intermediate generals who were still alive, and 1 advanced general who was a bloated and huge, pig-shaped monster. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see the shape of a human. However, the organs on his body looked like pigs. 2 fangs that were more than 10 meters long protruded out of his wide lips domineeringly. A fat and round nose was raised and covered in wrinkles, and those fan-sized ears only treated his head as a normal person. If one really compared it, these ears had a diameter of 20 meters. They were exceptionally eye-catching when placed together with his tall body. The moment this person appeared, Li Yuanqing focused his gaze on him. This guy was powerful and did not take Li Yuanqing seriously at all. Where did this wild kid come from? How can you block my path? The pig-faced monster's voice was like a bell. Do you think you're worthy of calling yourself a general?
Li Yuanqing spoke indifferently.
Although his voice was very soft, the difference in their bodies was still very clear. The pig-faced monster snorted coldly, and 2 very thick white smoke came out of its nostrils. The pig-faced monster's voice was as loud as several huge bells. Good, you're quite fast. I didn't pay attention, and you killed my beloved general. Li Yuanqing said indifferently, if you're dissatisfied with this, I'll be very generous and send you over to meet your brother elsewhere. Why? Are you going to kill me too? The pig-faced monster laughed as if he had heard a huge joke. Li Yuanqing replied without changing his expression, if you tell me honestly now who sent you, I might be able to let you live. If you continue to be stubborn, I'm afraid you'll only die. Let me live? The pig-faced monster looked at Li Yuanqing in confusion as if it did not hear him. It flapped its huge ears and said, Kid, your voice is too soft. I didn't hear you clearly. This fellow was actually a powerful person. He was at the 4th grade formation arrangement realm. Such strength could naturally be said to be domineering among the demons. However, he did not expect to meet Li Yuanqing today. He looked at Li Yuanqing with a smile and said, if the big shot in Rong City was still around, I might be afraid of you. However, that guy has already disappeared. You guys are just guarding here, yet you still dare to speak arrogantly to me. I think all of you are tired of living. As the monster spoke, he laughed out loud. The strong impact emitted from his voice shook the shield outside Rong City. However, the pressure on the south wall was much lower. After that, the shock waves from the other 3 sides were also blocked. Although they kept pouring their power into it, the effect was not as obvious as before. It could even be said to be negligible. These rebels also felt that it was strange. They were originally fighting well, but now it was getting more and more strenuous. Moreover, not only was it strenuous, but it also did not seem to have any effect at all. They did not know what went wrong. The pig-faced monster was still talking nonsense with Li Yuanqing when he suddenly received news from the other fronts. He was stunned for a moment before turning to look at Li Yuanqing in the sky. At this moment, the monster's eyes were completely focused on Li Yuanqing. There was a strong killing intent in its eyes. Kid, if I happen to pass by today, I could play with you. However, I have a heavy responsibility on my shoulders today. You should just die. As the pig head spoke, he took out a huge rake that was as tall as the sky. This huge rake flew in his hands like a nimble bamboo rod, looking very light. He only threw the rake heavily to the ground and immediately created a huge pit dozens of meters in diameter. The people in Rong City felt the powerful energy fluctuation outside and looked outside with lingering fear. The giant was standing there. Even ordinary people who were not standing on the city tower could clearly see the strange image of the pig-faced monster. This guy looked so terrifying, and the power on his body was so huge. He was like an ancient demon god outside the city. What was even more terrifying was that there was more than one powerful figure. Just as everyone was feeling such fear and despair, a lonely but determined figure stood in the sky. Who is that? That's young Master Li. That's right, it's young Master Li who saved us in the past. He's back now. It's really young Master Li. Young Master Li will definitely save us this time. They all looked up at the man in the sky. The man's slender back was so firm as he stood in front of the thick rebels. City Lord, Shouldn't we do something else while young Master Li is stalling for time? Should we prepare to completely strengthen the city's defense and activate the third shield? The other two shields are about to collapse. Yi Qilua looked at Li Yuanqing in the sky in a daze. At this moment, someone suddenly suggested. Although Hall Master Wang did not understand, he had heard his good friend say one or two words. This third defense had to be able to defend both inside and outside. Moreover, it could not be closed for a short period of time after it was activated. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to activate it again. As long as that was the case, wouldn't Li Yuanqing be locked outside? Li Yuanqing was trying his best to save their lives outside. Wasn't it a little too much to lock Li Yuanqing outside at a time like this? He hurriedly stopped the Great General. Great General, you can't do that. Young Master Li is still outside. The Great General stared at him coldly. What do you know? Since young Master Li has the strength to block these people outside, he will definitely be able to protect himself. At this time, we just have to protect our lives. We don't have to think too much about other things. That won't do. Young Master Li is struggling outside and might need our support at any time. If we activate this, young Master Li won't be able to enter. What if he's exhausted and needs to rest for a while? Where will he go? The Great General still looked determined. If even young Master Li can't hold on and wants to escape to the city, I'm afraid these rebels are far stronger than we can imagine. They're not something we can resist. When the other generals heard his words, they felt that it made sense and hurriedly said, "It can be said that young Master Li has bought us such precious time. We must strengthen this defense to the extreme. Young Master Li had come and stall time for us. If other aspects are broken through, young Master Li will be attacked from both sides. At that time, our crimes will be even greater." I agree with the Great General. For the sake of young Master Li, we should quickly erect the third defense. Only after the third shield is completely propped up can our Rong City be considered absolutely safe. Otherwise, we can only wait for death. Look, the other aspects are about to collapse. Many of them stood on the side with Hall Master Wang. They also supported waiting for the time being. At the very least, they could not let young Master Li, who had saved their lives, be cut off and blocked. The two sides could not come to an agreement, and the final decision would fall on Yi Qilua. Yi Qilua looked at Li Yuanqing, who was standing in the sky. A thick shield had condensed beside Li Yuanqing. It was very solid, almost corporeal. At this moment, the expression on the pig-faced monster's face was no longer as relaxed as before. He looked at Li Yuanqing opposite him with a solemn expression. He did not expect this little fellow to be so powerful. Just now, he thought that this human had come to die. According to the intelligence, hadn't that powerful enemy been lured away? Why was he here now? He looked at Li Yuanqing suspiciously. He felt that Li Yuanqing looked more and more like the fellow in the rumors. It was just a young kid with an unfathomable cultivation level. Moreover, he looked handsome and could have such strength at such a young age. It seemed like there was no one else. Could it be him? The pig-faced monster was a little surprised. If they had the strength to fight Li Yuanqing directly, they would not have to go through so much trouble to lure him away. However, from the looks of it, this person was too powerful, so he could not attack directly. He could only watch as Li Yuanqing's aura became stronger and stronger. Instead, he became timid and did not know what to do. Therefore, the two sides were in a stalemate. Li Yuanqing seemed to be brewing some plans, but he was not sure. After thinking for a moment, the pig-faced monster had already sent a message to invite reinforcements. No matter what, he had to call his brothers over first. At that time, everyone would gather together. Even if they could not gain the upper hand against this fellow, they would most likely be able to survive. As he calculated, the overall situation stabilized for the time being, and the argument on the city tower had an outcome. Yi Qilua looked at Li Yuanqing's back in a daze and said indifferently, "Open the third defensive shield. Take advantage of this opportunity." But, City Lord, if we really activate it, then young Master Li... At this moment, the Great General couldn't care less. As soon as Yi Qilua finished speaking, he waved his hand in high spirits and ordered, "Men, quickly send someone to spread the news. The City Lord has ordered the third layer of the defensive array to be activated immediately. Everyone in Rong City will defend for a month. As long as the third layer of defense shield was activated, it would be at least half a month. Their 1 month was a relatively stable plan. Hall Master Wang looked at the great general and the others with a livid expression. He also looked at Yi Qiluo in confusion. The city lord clearly had such a good relationship with young Master Li. Moreover, Li Yuanqing had a good temper and was so strong. He could be said to have taken good care of Rong City. At such a critical moment, he could still rush over in time to save them. Why did the city lord have to forget his past kindness? Wasn't she sending Li Yuanqing to his death by rejecting young Master Li and letting him face the army alone? Hall Master Wang wanted to fight for it again, but he could not say anything. However, at this moment, Yi Qiluo suddenly took off her cloak and armor and placed them neatly on the ground. City Lord, what are you doing? Hall Master Wang walked forward in confusion and supported Yi Qiluo. The great general turned to look over and said with a smile, "The city lord is already exhausted from supervising the battle here. Someone, bring the city lord away to rest for the time being." However, Yi Qiluo pushed the 2 guards aside and jumped onto the wall outside. She stood at the highest point and turned around to look at the great general behind her. "I, Yi Qiluo, will never forget young Master Li's kindness to me. Now that the enemy is in front of us, as the city lord of Rong City and the saintess of the human race, I can't watch as he faces so many enemy troops alone outside. I'm willing to accompany him to fight the enemy, and I'll leave everyone in Rong City to you, General." The great general's expression changed a few times, as if he did not know what expression to put on. He stared fixedly at Yi Qiluo, not knowing if she was really determined to die with Li Yuanqing. "City Lord, you're the saintess of the human race. How can you go out and die so easily? If young Master Li really needs help, I'll go. The great general is brave and good at fighting. I hope that under the great general's lead, the human race can truly stabilize, unlike the continuous battles now." After Yi Qiluo finished speaking, she turned around firmly and stared at Li Yuanqing in the sky. She jumped off the city wall. "City Lord, Saintess," a group of people shouted behind her. They could not figure out why the city lord had left just like that. The great general looked coldly at the place where Yi Qiluo had jumped down and instructed in an unquestionable tone. "The city lord has used her life to repay young Master Li. We naturally have to wholeheartedly protect Rong City and not let any danger befall Rong City. Activate the 3rd shield immediately." Hall Master Wang looked at the empty wall with a melancholic expression. Now that Yi Qiluo was no longer here, no one listened to him. However, no one knew what was wrong with Yi Qiluo. Why did she suddenly take things so hard? Who could have expected this? Yi Qiluo held a long sword with a green jade handle. The sword itself was psychic. With a light shake, the sound of spring water could be heard. This sword was called the Jade Wave Sword and was considered a rather famous Dharma artifact. Now that it was in Yi Qiluo's hands, after so many years, the aura of both sides seemed to have fused into one. Li Yuanqing did not even turn around. He asked Yi Qiluo, "Why are you here? It's very dangerous outside. Go outside and wait for a while. I'll settle it soon." Yi Qiluo bit her lip and said indignantly, "I know that you think I'm useless, but I am the city lord of Rong City after all. At this critical moment, don't want to just stand on the city wall and watch you take the risk for Rong City. It's useless for you to stay here. Hurry up and go back. It's too dangerous outside. If that pig head goes crazy later, I'll have to make an effort to take care of you." Yi Qiluo did not even turn around. She looked at the huge pig head and said angrily, "In any case, no matter what you say, young Master Li, Rong City can't rely on a completely unrelated person to protect it. I'm the city lord of Rong City. I have to bear such a responsibility. If you want to go back, go back." Li Yuanqing turned to look at her. For some reason, his heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He felt a very strange feeling in his heart. It filled his heart, as if it was a little sour and sad. However, this strange feeling always seemed to be disturbing his thoughts, making him unable to focus. He frowned slightly and threw those messy thoughts to the back of his mind. He focused on the tens of thousands of troops in front of him. A few very huge forces were approaching. The pig-faced monster looked at the little woman who had suddenly appeared and suddenly laughed. "Good Lord, The two of you are already on the verge of death. How can you still be in the mood to talk about love at a time like this? I see that you humans are becoming more and more undisciplined. You can even forget about cultivation and only think about love. No wonder you were enslaved by the demons for so many years and can't raise your heads. Yi Qilua sneered and replied, Senior Zhu, I remember that you were still human when we met more than 10 years ago. Although you're a monster now, you still have a human body. Why have you become such a demon now? The pig-faced monster was not angry. It smiled and swung its two huge fangs as it said proudly, If these demons were your companions, they would naturally teach you such pure power, giving you a chance to obtain such a powerful body. You can even cause such huge damage without using artifacts. Senior Zhu, you're right. I almost believed you. The pig-faced monster sneered and looked at Yi Qilua. Junior, I won't lower myself to your level if you're ignorant. However, after you so-called orthodox humans die, powerful and talented people like us will naturally have a chance to stand out. We won't be treated as rebels by you and have a tainted reputation. As this fellow spoke, the huge amounts of energy gathered here and sped over from 3 directions behind, landing beside Li Yuanqing and Yi Qilua. Li Yuanqing took a look and saw that the 3 of them were in the form of a tiger, a leopard, and a hound. When the 3 of them arrived, they surrounded the 2 of them and looked at them in surprise. Old Zhu, what did you say just now? According to the news from His Excellency, the person is already trapped in Sea City and won't be able to rush over in a short period of time. Why would he appear here? I think you probably don't have the ability to capture this person. Just say that he's a powerful person. The person who said this was the tiger-headed monster. After the tiger-headed monster finished speaking, the other 2 brothers also laughed. The 3 of them looked at the pig-headed monster at the same time. Clearly, they did not have a particularly good attitude. The pig-faced monster was not angry, but he became more and more cautious. He reminded his 3 brothers, We can't be careless. This guy is very powerful. I was actually at a disadvantage when I fought him just now. Fortunately, he doesn't have much strength left. After the collision just now, we were in a stalemate. Now that the 4 of us are gathered here, as long as we destroy this kid, Rong City will naturally be hopeless. After hearing the pig-faced monster's analysis, the other 3 no longer mocked him. Instead, they focused their attention on Li Yuanqing. However, there was a very thick golden shield around Li Yuanqing's body, blocking all their divine senses outside, preventing them from sensing his true strength. At this moment, the power was slightly weaker. After a while, the 3rd defense in Rong City was finally officially activated. A very strong shield kept stacking up inside, layer by layer, like building a house. Finally, the golden shield was covered in dark gray tiles. This inconspicuous dark gray tile was their strongest defensive array. As long as such an array was around, even an intermediate formation arrangement realm expert would take a long time to completely break it. However, after seeing this array formation, it meant that they were completely isolated from the outside. The people inside could not come out even if they wanted to, let alone the people outside. Oh, good Lord. So they throw out these 2 juniors. However, it's fine. This little girl is the saintess of the human race. As long as we capture this little girl back, we will be the orthodox of the human race. Those inside will be the rebels. When the pig-faced monster said this, the others also looked at Yi Qilua with greed in their eyes. Good Lord, old pig, you didn't say anything just now. We actually didn't notice that this little girl had already become so beautiful. Her figure will definitely make people unable to stop. That's easy. Big Brother Tiger will definitely be the first. I'm willing to wait. If that's the case, you can count me in. Everyone says that she's the saintess of the human race. I want to see how the orthodox lineage of the human race is different from ordinary girls. Ha 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 ha. As the 3 of them spoke, they raised their heads and laughed loudly. Just as they were indulging in their pride, Li Yuanqing, who was standing in the middle, suddenly grabbed Yi Qilua's hand and turned into a meteor. He ran out openly in the middle of the 4 of them. Such an arrogant action naturally caused the 4 of them to hurriedly chase after him. Good Lord, you're already a turtle in a jar, yet you still plan to escape. Let me see where you can escape to. Guys, Attack the city with all your might and try to shatter this turtle shell as soon as possible." Before the pig-faced monster left, he gave one last order and followed the footsteps of his three good brothers towards Li Yuanqing. Li Yuanqing ran forward with Yi Qilua following beside him. She looked at Li Yuanqing with a red face. "Young Master Li, where are we going? They've been following us the entire time. I don't think we can shake them off." Li Yuanqing said indifferently, "It's not convenient to attack from outside the city. It's much more convenient to bring them into the forest." "What? Young Master Li, you're—" Yi Qilua never expected that Li Yuanqing was not here to escape with her. Instead, he wanted to kill the four fourth-grade formation arrangement realm experts behind him. "But young Master Li, with their strength, the two of us definitely won't be able to go against them. I'm only at the peak of the spirit transformation realm now, and the formation arrangement realm is still far away. Although I don't know what method they used, they're all fourth-grade formation arrangement realm experts. If we really fight, I'm afraid the two of us will be doomed." Li Yuanqing did not answer Yi Qilua's question. He only continued to run towards the forest and dodge left and right. The few people behind kept chasing after him and even leisurely shot out beams of light from their hands. Because Li Yuanqing still had to dodge their attacks, his speed was not very fast. They were very relaxed when chasing after him. "Old pig, your strength has decreased greatly recently. No matter how I look at it, the power in your body is so superficial. I think you should do less obscene things and focus on cultivation." "Brother Tiger, you're right." The pig-faced monster did not dare to say anything after being taught a lesson by the tiger-head monster. He only dared to nod repeatedly in agreement. Among the few of them, the energy he had accumulated was the weakest, so it did not seem to be a problem to be taught a lesson. Seeing that the two fellows in front were getting closer and closer, the few of them could not help but speed up. "All right, don't play with the two of them here. We've already chased them so far. It's better to deal with the two of them as soon as possible and go back to take down Rong City. Only then will we really complete the mission. At that time, there will be endless power poured into our bodies. Don't you know how good this cultivation feels? With Big Brother Tiger's order, we'll immediately take them down. Go!" Seeing that the few fellows behind were getting closer and closer, Yi Qilua tried her best to pry Li Yuanqing's hand away. "Young Master Li, you should leave first. You're too slow to bring me along. They're about to catch up. Leave me here." Li Yuanqing still did not agree to Yi Qilua's request, but he tightened his grip. The deep warmth from his palm warmed Yi Qilua's wrist. It was such an unfamiliar feeling. With a command from the tiger-headed monster behind, the four brothers instantly increased their speed to the extreme and surrounded Li Yuanqing from four different directions. The four of them slowly approached Li Yuanqing. From the looks of it, there was no way out. Moreover, they had made air defense preparations this time. The four of them put pressure in midair. If Li Yuanqing wanted to escape again, it would not be as easy as before. "Little guy, don't waste your energy there. Stay here obediently, and I'll give you a quick death. As for your little girlfriend, we still have a use for her." Li Yuanqing looked at the pig head above him expressionlessly and suddenly said, "As humans, how can the energy forcefully injected from the demons last long? In less than 3 years, you will definitely explode and die." When the tiger-headed monster heard Li Yuanqing's words, the muscles on its face twitched slightly, but it still calmed down. "Kid, do you think you can escape with your little girlfriend with those strange words of yours? It's not up to you to worry what will happen to us in 3 years, but the two of you are definitely dead now.